Welcome to Behind the Warrior, a podcast presented by the EOD Warrior Foundation. This series will focus on resources, interviews, and topics impacting EOD warriors, their families, and the military community at large.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Warrior. I am your host, Maria Schabla, and today we are very excited to be speaking to active duty Navy EOD technician and podcast host of Echo Oscar Delta podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Jerron.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Well, we are really excited to be talking to you today. And I always like to start from the beginning. So can you tell us about your childhood and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Livermore, California. It's most people don't know where that is. It's probably about an hour from San Francisco. And yeah, childhood was pretty unremarkable, I guess you could say. My parents were both teachers. In grade school, they both taught at the school I was at. So
Wow.
You'd think that made it so that I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but I actually did. But then, in high school, I got into running, was pretty athletic. And my mom said that I always like to take things apart. And then that didn't always get put back together. But I think that's part of what eventually led me to wanting to do a job like this. I graduated high school barely. I was not a stellar student. I kind of did just enough to get by, not necessarily because I wasn't smart, but I just did not apply myself.
Yeah, I think there's a balance, right? Somewhere in the middle is good. So what got you interested in the Navy?
Well, I had bought a house. It was actually my parents' house with a friend, and we both went in on it. And after owning that for a year or two, my dad ended up passing away. Me and my friend bought the house. They used that money to buy a condo in California, a condo in Montana, and then some land in Montana. He went up to Montana to go kind of set everything up and start figuring out the build and the house and all that. And while he was up there, he ended up passing away unexpectedly. And over the next about year, I guess, I kind of just wanted a massive change. I'm pretty good at massive changes.
Wow.
And yeah, I just kind of decided I needed I needed a few things. I needed enough money to pay my portion of the house. I needed a physical challenge and a mental challenge. And I had three options. One was to take a scholarship offer. I was at a junior college at the time. I had a couple scholarship offers for running to go finish the degree. The other one was to move to Vegas and play poker full time. Probably good I didn't choose that one. And then the third was join the military.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Those roads could have taken you such different places.
Indeed. I'm glad I chose the one I did.
So did you have a family history of Navy, or how did you end up choosing the Navy?
No, actually, my dad, he was quite a bit older. He was born in 1929, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, he was 76 when he passed away. But he had done 2 years in the Air Force and it was definitely a different military back then. He had some ridiculous stories that were pretty funny. But honestly, I actually didn't initially come in to EOD. I didn't know anything about EOD. I did what probably far too many young kids, and I'll say young even though I was 23 when I was in boot camp. I heard about Navy SEALs, and that's what I wanted to do because, it's got a cool TV show or, TV show, movies, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, so that I ended up, joined because of that. And that's really, I just wanted that crazy physical challenge. And yeah.
So you joined to be a Navy SEAL.
Yep, that was the original goal.
And then how did you end up in EOD?
Well, I won't lie like a lot of people. I just straight up quit. During Hell Week, I quit and spent, I don't know, several weeks or a month just working, all the jobs that an E2 who quit and has no real job in the Navy does. I cleaned whatever they told me to. And I was about to pick either IS, so intelligence specialist, or air crew. And I was walking on base and one of my buddies stopped me and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I told him and he's like, "Dude, you should come over and get beat with the EOD guys with us." And I was like, okay. So I went over and I PSI'd at Mobile Unit 3 and I really learned what EOD was while I was doing lots of push-ups and other fun things that they found for me to do.
Fun.
Exactly. I like to use the word fun because, and yeah, they kind of explained what EOD was. Mm-hmm. And it actually, it really, I was actually glad that I quit Buds because what they were talking about seemed like it suited the mental challenge more that I wanted. They both had the physical challenge, but the mental challenge was seemed like it was going to be a lot more suited to me.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I always feel like everything works out, and that's great. That's a great story. So can you tell us, you are currently active duty. Can you tell us some of the highlights of your career?
Yeah, so when I graduated EOD school, I took the long road. I double tapped the absolute last test in school. So I spent an extra 3 to 5 months in EOD school, but it was fun. Then I went to Guam for the first duty station, EOD Mobile Unit 5, and I was there for about 5.5 years. I got to. It's our least favorite deployment, but it actually provided a lot of good experience. I went on a carrier for the first deployment.
Oh, wow.
The second one, I went to the Philippines. The third one, I was attached to an Army unit that was, we just kind of staged waiting and lots of training. We didn't get to go do anything crazy, but we got lots of training. And then 5.5 years done there, and I came stateside, went to Virginia Beach to our training unit, was there for 3 years where I was in Nuclear Hazards Division and then our FTX Division. And then now I've been at EOD Mobile Unit 6, also in Virginia, for the last almost 6 years now.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and then out of here, I've done a couple deployments, and I call them deployments because they're away from home, but to Florida, where we staged to go work in South America. And then I took over kind of the last minute. I got back from being in Florida for 5 months, and 2.5 months later, I took over for a team and went back on a carrier to lead the team and did that for 7 months. And then now I'm doing its expeditionary mine countermeasures company position. So I have an EOD team and a UMS under, basically they're like an underwater robot team.
Oh, wow. Wow, that sounds interesting. And it sounds like you've had a very robust career so far.
Yeah,
a lot of different experiences.
It has. It's been pretty varied. Not everything I've wanted, but I have sometimes, even though you don't get the things you want, you get things that leave a lasting impression. And there's some stories for after I retire that have definitely fulfilled me in what I've wanted to do. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, on December 17th, 2022, you started a podcast to spotlight Navy EOD. Can you tell us what inspired you to do that?
Yeah, so it was kind of a couple things, but when I got back from the carrier, I took over as department LCPO. So I was in charge of our N4 supply department. That is not necessarily the highlight of an EOD tech's career, but it's something that has to be done and actually taught me a lot, which is good. While I was doing that, I was sitting next to one of the retired guys who had done, well over 20 years. And basically every day I got to just hear stories and bug him. Mm-hmm. And over that time, I realized I was, he wasn't like, we didn't start the day with, okay, Jerron, lesson 1 today is, but he just told me stories, and I realized I was actually learning a lot of stuff, using his career to kind of gain some form of experience. Well, it's not my personal hands-on, it's lessons that he's learned in fun story form.
Wow.
And then I think with everything, with the wars dying down and, not happening in Iraq, Afghanistan anymore, and we're not supporting that right now, that's been such a long part of the whole military's job, and especially Navy EOD. We've been really focused on that, and we're not right now. Mm-hmm. And things are kind of shifting, and people are, the only thing worse than doing something new is changing, right? So everybody gets frustrated and they don't know exactly what to do, and all they know is I can complain, right? And
people are pretty good at that, actually.
Yeah, indeed. I had a conversation with he's now retired, but Master Chief Ted Pickett, and I actually happened to be complaining about something that I won't get into, but he looked at me and was like, "Of the people that you're talking about, who's doing something to make things better?" And really, what he was saying is, what are you doing to make things better? And when I actually asked myself that, later, I realized I'm not really doing anything other than what I'm being paid to do. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, I felt like there was more I could do. And then it all kind of converged, right? I wanted to start something where it's not just me learning the lessons. I can share those. And hopefully it gives our junior guys in Navy EOD a realization that whether it's wartime or peacetime, there's always something for EOD to do. That's one of the beauties of this job, is we don't have to be actively engaged in war to go make massive differences. Mm-hmm. And by starting the podcast, getting people to come on and share whatever they wanted to. So that's the big thing for me, is right off the get-go, I don't ever have an agenda for what I wanted a podcast to be. It's solely what the person wants to talk about and what they feel like they want to share. Mm-hmm. And the idea is, I take something from literally every episode, and if, 10 people are watching, there's probably 10 different things that are taken from it. So everybody has their own perspective.
I love that. That is awesome. Okay, so your logo is a crab with a banner over the top that reads Echo Oscar Delta. And you have a pretty hilarious story on how you got that. Can you tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, so I wanted a cool logo, and I have no artistic ability. So I found a picture of a crab, like an actual crab. And then I took a picture of the EOD master crab, and I went on Fiverr and I paid someone $35 to make me a logo, and it actually came back really good. So I went with it.
I died when you told me that story. I was like, who uses Fiverr anymore? That was like I don't know how long ago, but it just cracked me up. So the next time I need something, I'm going to remember you.
Yeah, there's actually some quality people on Fiverr.
That is awesome. Way to go, Fiverr. So, okay, the other thing is I really actually genuinely love the music on your intro and your extro. So I was wondering how you found it and what that song was.
Well, it kind of is a similar route to why I went on Fiverr. Uh-huh. When you're starting something, and you don't have any money, you have to go with free. Or as cheap as possible. So, who made the music? I actually had to look this up because I couldn't remember. The name of the song is Action Rock, and the name of the band is Less FM. I just straight up went on a website that does free royalty music, and I probably spent 45 minutes to an hour just clicking through song after song after song until I found something that I was like, okay, this kind of meets my intent.
Yeah, it was good. I like it. I
appreciate it.
Yeah, because it kind of stood out to me. So that's hilarious. I love it. What was it called again?
Action Rock, Less FM.
Okay, yeah. That's got a good energy. You know, it kind of like gets you going. So
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so you recently published your 18th episode. Can you tell us about your experience as a podcast host and what you've kind of learned along the way?
Oh man, I've learned so much. So I'll tell that the first podcast I ever did, it actually took me a long time to put out that first episode. I recorded it in September, and then I kind of held off deciding whether I wanted to really do it or not. But that first episode with Trevor Maxwell, he does a podcast for transition assistance and like people getting out of the military.
Oh, awesome.
And he said, hey, come on over, bring your stuff, and I'll show you my gear, you show me yours, and we'll talk about it. And so he had me set my stuff up, and I did. And then he was like, all right, let's go. Let's do a podcast. And I was like, wait, I was not prepared. So from day one, I have not been prepared to do this at all.
He just sprung it on you like that. What in the world?
Yeah. I've expanded into doing kind of video and the audio, and I try to do that with most episodes. Just like in EOD, you know, we plan an operation and we think of what are all the things that can go wrong? How can I, you know, do something to back it up? So I record on each camera, then those cameras run into a hardware, and I record on that, which records the cameras and it records the audio. And then I record the audio separately. And the first 10 episodes, nothing went perfect. I had to pull just the audio and link it with the camera because the hardware didn't record it, or just all kinds of crazy things. And now I literally have 3x5 cards now that I'll pull out and just go through and check off.
Oh,
and
you have a checklist. I like it.
I do. Yeah. Pulling that from EOD too. So on the physically like doing things, I've learned a lot and how to deal with, you know, issues here and there. But then what I've learned during the episodes talking to people is just a lot. I've learned there's a couple things that I've learned, and then there's some stuff that kind of I already knew, but it's just even more pronounced. And one of them is that nobody knows what EOD is. It's crazy how many people joined and had no idea what EOD was. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast too, is, you know, help get the word out, because, you know, it's not just Navy. The podcast for me is pretty much just Navy. But that's a product of it. It's my community, you know, the Navy EOD specifically. And it takes so much time. It'd be so hard active duty to be able to bring in others. But, you know, I have Army, Air Force friends. I've had a few Marine EOD friends, and they've got just insane stories. And even in those, you know, other services, a lot of guys didn't know what EOD was. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of one thing that I learned, I guess. And then I learned that I've changed a lot of views on, not a lot. I've changed views on a few things. And one of them is, we'll probably talk somewhere around it, but is veteran suicide. And I've been kind of, and just suicide in general. I haven't told it publicly, but I kind of am getting to the point where I hate me for my old view, but hopefully you don't for my new one. And it's you know, I was pretty judgmental for a while, and I've realized that there's a lot more to it than just on the surface, you know, the quote unquote selfish portion of it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I've realized that so many people, when they get out, you've spent, even if you've only spent, you know, 4 or 6 years doing this, but especially when you've spent, you know, 15, 20, 30 years doing this job, it's an intense, stressful job. Mm-hmm. And then, but it has a pretty tight community, and then you leave it and it can get heavy. And it's really caused me, because of doing the podcast and talking to a lot of different people from, you know, minimal amount of time and low ranking to a lot of time and very high ranking, that portion of it is not exclusive to any one demographic. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned and the biggest change that I've kind of made.
Wow, that is so deep, Jerron, and it's so important. And I think it's so amazing that you're sharing that on the podcast. You know, what a huge lesson. And you're so humble to share that with us. So, you know, and that kind of brings me to my next question, because here at the foundation, we are very passionate about promoting the importance of taking care of your mental health. And just wondering, can you tell us your thoughts on the importance of mental health and how you take care of your mind?
Yeah. I'll say for a long time, I didn't. I had a misconstrued version of mental health. I thought mental health was just quote unquote being hard, which really is ignoring all of your feelings and just pushing forward. And honestly, there's a lot of things that have kind of like crept into my life, and not like bad, crazy, over the top, just things that I didn't realize long-term stress and not dealing with that stress does to you. Mm-hmm. And some of those are just, you know, terrible sleep. Got, you know, 12 years running of terrible sleep. So here's to another 12. But what I've realized is mental health and being mentally strong specifically is not just pushing things off and not dealing with them. There's definitely a place for that. You know, when you're downrange, yeah, you can't worry about a lot of things. You have to kind of do the job so that you can get to a safe area. But since I've come to that realization, I talk to the psych pretty frequently. And for me, it's not a lot of, you know, things I did or saw. I didn't get to go to Iraq or Afghanistan as much as I tried / wanted to. You know, and I've seen a few things here or there outside of that. None of what I've seen or done bothers me at all. Honestly, it's just the long-term stress. And what I talk to the psych the most about is how to understand how my wife and kids are viewing me so that I can see that better. And that has actually helped me a lot. And dealing with that home side has helped the work side a lot better. I'm able to focus more at work, and I'm able to actually shut off work when I need to spend more mental ability at home. So.
Wow, that is great. That is great insight. And, you know, I hope that a lot of people listening will take that into consideration and maybe evaluate, like, how are they interacting with their families? And, you know, might that be something that they might want to address as well? And so I think that's fantastic, because it's never just the warrior. Their families are serving right there alongside with them. So I think that is amazing. So taking a different avenue here, some of your recent podcasts, you interviewed Harvey Fisher. I hope I pronounced these people's names right. Harvey Fisher, Kyle, is it Mazer? Lawrence Ronan. And this one I really don't know. Nap D.
DeChutis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mason McCabe and Nick Cush. Can you give our listeners a sneak peek on some of the interviews that you have coming down the pipe?
Yeah. So what I try to do is a day or two before my episodes go out, I try to actually take a clip from them and make a teaser, and I'll put that on a couple of the social medias. So Scott Weavers just came out. He's a retired senior chief. Actually, I think officially he retires in 2 days when the episode actually comes out.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then I have Bob Pizzini. He's actually did a bunch of enlisted time, a bunch of officer time, and now he's a business owner here in Virginia Beach. He owns I Fly Virginia Beach. Chris Rudiger, he did, I think, 26 years in the Navy, then got out, did another 8 years as a cop in Florida. Jay Lee, he did, I think 12 years, got out as a chief, and has a business where he's got just a crazy story about literally being on target and an incident that could have gone very bad. And the reason why is he was focusing more on financial stuff. And that affected him so much that when he got out, he actually, his job now is to help people get a hold of their finances so that it doesn't become a problem.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. There's a bunch of, it's amazing how you don't have to throw a stone very far in EOD and find some people with some amazing stories.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome. And they sound so interesting. I don't know how you keep up with it and take care of your active duty job. It's a lot. So, wow. Kudos to you. So for anyone out there interested in sharing their story and maybe doing an interview with you, what's the best way to reach out?
So I have a couple different social medias. Instagram is honestly where a lot of people have reached out. And if you just search Echo Oscar Delta on Instagram, I'll pop up. You can send me an email to Echo Oscar Delta Mark II @gmail.com. Straight up Echo Oscar Delta was taken, so I had to add the Mark II.
I was like, what's that Mark II? That's not your name.
Yeah. Those are probably the best ways to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm so excited that you've started this. It sounds like you've got some exciting interviews that you've already done and some more coming down. And just thank you for everything that you're doing, Jerron.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And I'm very excited to see where this is going to lead you because you just never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we appreciate you. And as is our tradition, we are going to end this interview with a couple of questions about your favorite things.
Okay.
So question number 1, what is your favorite podcast?
I would say I actually kind of have two. Joe Rogan and then the Cleared Hot podcast. Those are the two I kind of flip back and forth the most between.
Okay. And funny story, I have not ever listened to Joe Rogan. When I first started this, my friends were like, oh, like Joe Rogan? I'm like, who's that? But that's interesting. And then what is the second one that's your favorite? What is that about?
So that is, he's a retired Navy SEAL, Andy Stumpf. He does a similar format, I guess. He just has people that he finds interesting on. And that's kind of why I like those is I'll go on and I'll read the descriptions, which I found out most people do not, because everybody always asks me, oh, what is this person's, that you've interviewed? What is their, what do they talk about? I'm like, it's in the description.
Yeah.
But I'll go in and look at the description of a person. And if, sometimes they'll be in science, sometimes they'll be an author, just the variety. And that's kind of what I like is the random variety.
Yeah, I love that. Variety is the spice of life.
Indeed.
Okay, so second question, what is your favorite type of food?
Any nutritionist is going to hate me, but honestly, anything with sugar.
Really?
I have the worst sweet tooth. I get on my wife because she has so much more willpower than me. She can have delicious things in the house and eat them only when she wants them. And I will just eat them until they're gone. It's terrible.
Well, is there a favorite sweet? Like, what do you prefer? Cookies, cakes, ice cream? I'm trying to think what there is.
Lately, I finished off an entire lemon meringue pie from Costco, so the big size, by myself in a week, and that was me holding back. So that was my drug of choice, I guess you could say.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, what is your favorite vacation spot?
This one's easy. Montana, specifically. My family my grandparents had bought a cabin on a lake, Ashley Lake up in Montana. And we spent every summer when I was a kid going up there. And it is the place that I can go to and just sit, no cell phone, no interaction with the outside world, and just be extremely happy.
Oh,
it's beautiful there.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually got to check out Bozeman this year for the first time. And
nice.
It was cold.
Yeah, it is cold in the winter. That is for sure.
Okay, so our last question. What is your favorite hobby or thing to do in your downtime?
Well, it used to be woodworking. And then I had 3 kids. And so now the garage is a storage place for the woodworking, and all of their stuff is on top of it. So now, honestly, I would say podcasting.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that. Oh, wow. Well, you are a busy man, Jerron. 3 kids, active duty, and podcast host. That's phenomenal. Well, thank you again. We're so excited for you. And I just want to encourage all of our listeners to check out Echo Oscar Delta podcast.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And keep up the awesome work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to our Behind the Warrior podcast, brought to you by the EOD Warrior Foundation. The EOD Warrior Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving the EOD community by providing financial assistance, scholarships, and providing hope and wellness resources for the active duty, reserve, National Guard, retired, and veteran EOD communities and their families. We also honor our fallen and wounded EOD technicians by maintaining the EOD Memorial and Remembrance Garden. We do all this through the generosity of individual and corporate donors and sponsors. If you would like to assist the foundation or support our Behind the Warrior podcast, click the link on our webpage at eodwarriorfoundation.org or contact us at info@eodwarriorfoundation.org. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to tell a friend. The various opinions, beliefs, and viewpoints expressed by guests, contributors, and participants of the Behind the Warrior podcast are their own and are intended for informational purposes only. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions, beliefs, viewpoints, or policies of the EOD Warrior Foundation or its employees and volunteers.